prep conversation. We're going to talk to Sean Shedlarski today, and we're going to talk 250Rs and some of the things that he does as a developer, and things that he will talk to us about what he makes in the jeeping industry. And he's a designer and an engineer, so he's a pretty smart dude. I think he's checked in already. Things started. We need to big shout out to GBC. These conversations are brought to you by them. They do an amazing job for us. Sean, how are you, buddy? You were there for a second and now you're froze.
Hold on. All right.
How you doing? How you doing,
go.
Sean?
I think we're good.
Just hanging in there, man.
How are you, bro?
You know, long days, lots of things going on. You know, same as you.
I know. I know. We chat a lot, so we are in the same boat a lot.
Hey, you know, let's get this thing kicked off really, really great. What do you exactly do as far as you're an engineer and you design parts, but where does all this come from?
So I have been a software engineer for, I don't know, 25 years. Worked for a lot of large companies and been building websites. I'm an architect for Toyota.com. So I've been working on Toyota for the last 10 years. And, you know, that's where it all came from. I went to college as a biology major. I actually didn't finish college. And then I just started self-teaching myself and got into software, and kind of it fit. I ran with it. And that has just evolved over time into different engineering.
You want to know what's the struggle on the starting line? I don't get it. Yeah.
What's the struggle on the starting line? Which starting?
All that just to struggle to start your bike on the line, you know.
Well, you know, I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania, near the Poconos, about 30 minutes from Scranton, PA. And a lot of viewers will know Scranton if they watched The Office, because it was all filmed in Scranton. So, you know, I was a rural setting, and I started riding, I guess it was probably 91, 92. My dad bought me, actually had a Yamaha RT180 dirt bike. And old school, right? So I rode the crap out of that, and then I ended up getting a 250X, and it was a 1987 250X bone stock. And over one winter, tore it down, put new axles on, new shocks, all that stuff, and I tore the crap out of that thing, dude. That was bulletproof. You know, it was one of those bikes that still today, it's the Honda reliability, if you will. Always wanted a 250R, never got one. So 23 years later, when I got back into the sport, that had to be the first one I got.
Okay. From your perspective, what is the allure to the 250R?
You know, it was always watching the Huevos videos, looking at Dirt Wheels magazine, and that was the quad. You know, that was the race quad back in the day. It's still a legend, right? So it was something that I attached myself to, and I had to have one, you know, and obviously I've expanded out since then, but I never got to race living back east. I just leisurely rode, and I always wanted to ride out west. Because growing up on the East Coast, back then, my impression was the epicenter was out here in California. And after learning, you know, over the past couple of years more about the sport, I think I was actually in the epicenter. Living in Pennsylvania and, you know, close to Ohio and West Virginia and GNCC and the Blackwater 100, and all these other cool races. But for some reason in my head, I was like, I always thought Glamis. Glamis had the spotlight and all these other riding places. So that was my goal. That's why I actually got back into the sport. I started out with a bike purposely built 250R for the dudes. +4 swing arm, had it all. And I never made it to the dunes then. I ended up just deciding to race. So I tore that bike apart, and I never rebuilt a 250R in my life. But I tore it apart and made my first desert bike because I always wanted to race desert. So my first race was the end of January in 2020. Not knowing what was a few months ahead of us with COVID. So, it was my first race I DNF'd because my shift shaft stripped out. It was not a perfect shift shaft. Maybe I didn't have the shifter tightened down quite enough. I don't know. But, I made it about a few miles and the shifter went out. So it is what it was. But that started the journey and kind of just got my feet wet. I talked to several local guys who helped me get started, because a lot of guys even ask me today, like, how do you get started in racing? And that's always a big question, and it might be a good topic for you, just how do you get started? But you figure that out. You talk to some cool people that have been in it for a while, and then just go do it. Doesn't matter if it's a stock bike, built bike, it doesn't matter.
That's kind of the pretense when I get asked. It doesn't matter. You need a kill switch, a pair of Nerf bars. Hey, go ride your machine. Sign up in the lowest class you can, and remember, it's fun. There's guys that are getting paid to do this, and they're in the pro class, and they spend a lot of money, and they make some money, and you're not that guy. So remember, have fun with it.
That's always been my mantra, man. Like, even today, I'm not the fastest racer out there. I'll be 46 next month. I came into this sport at 43 years old. But you know what? I had to check it off my list. I'm a no regrets guy. At the end of the day, 20, 30 years from now, whatever it is, I don't want to be laying on a bed saying, I wish I did this, I wish I did that. And that's kind of why I went into it, was more, yes, for myself, but also to help motivate others. Age can be a number if you keep yourself in shape and you stay motivated.
Wait a minute, you're putting too many parameters in it. I don't care if you're out of shape or if you're 75 years old. If you want to go race, there's nothing holding you back but you. You just need to go out there and do it. The biggest problem we have in anything that we do, I don't care if we're counting widgets or racing ATVs or whatever it is just you got to just go do it.
Yeah. And that's the type guy I am. I mean, you know my history, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and there's some reasons that I chose to do this, reasons that pushed me harder to do it versus just a bucket list thing. So I completely agree 100%. Just do it. Even if you race one race, just do it. Like, look, they had a pro stock class in ATV MX. They were crushing it on stock bikes. So you don't need anything big. And that's what people ask me all the time. Like, what do I need to do this? I'm like, you already stated it. Depending on what you're running, you need a set of bars and a kill switch.
And
that's it.
You talk to those pros that raced that pro stock class, they loved it. Could you imagine the dollar figures we could save if you mandated the B and C classes couldn't change some of those parts? Couldn't go out and build pro level machines. I'm granted it's counterproductive to the performance guys in the industry. I get it, but wait a minute, it's not. We're going to build better riders if we teach them how to ride on stock machines and develop them into riders, so that when they go to the A class and all of a sudden now they have a skill set and they get a machine that's awesome, they're going to be like, oh my God, let's do this.
No doubt. And I learned that after the fact. I have one of my riders who is in A class going to Pro-Am for next year at Works. And he kind of inspired me because he's been running a Yamaha. So when I got my YFZ, I was like, you know what? I don't want any aftermarket suspension. I want to keep it stock because I wish I had started on a stock machine or close to stock versus spending boatloads of money in building a machine that did not help me.
No, it actually hindered you because it allowed you to go faster, but you didn't know what to do when you went faster. You didn't have the muscle memory.
Right.
You didn't have the skill set to go through the whoops that fast. And your mind wasn't ready for that. So, yes, you needed to develop and learn. Why do you think we have Pee-wee football and then a little bit more aggressive football as they get older, or the levels of baseball? Or I mean, there's just so many different levels of everything. Racing, unfortunately, if you have enough money, you can go out and buy a pro-level machine, go to the starting line, and race. And I'm like, wait a minute. You won the class because you spent $40,000. You didn't win it because you have more skill.
Or you didn't win it even
Right.
though you spent $40,000 because
Right.
you didn't know what to do with it.
That too.
And that is what I learned. That is what I learned.
I would love to see the series, whatever series it is, take on some responsibility to lock the lower levels into stock machines. Maybe you can.
I think at minimum C class should be
Yeah,
stock.
and then in the B class you could do an exhaust and something else, or whatever you got to do to make the machine safe, or no engine work, no aftermarket shocks, things like that, so that you keep those playing fields level. And if you wanted to keep the cost down in your A class, mandate a level of fuel that you can't go past. Then it just changes the motor dynamics. If you want to run in the pro class and you want to run on steroids, and you're running those high dollar motors, great, knock yourself out. That's what it's there for.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you don't know what to do with the power and with the handling and all this other stuff, you're just emptying your pocket for no real reason. And yeah, it's great for social media, and I'm not going to lie, that's helped me with social media. But at the end of the day, it's not going to make you a better rider. You need to learn from the basics.
Exactly. Brian Fuller, when Garen Fuller was learning to ride, he wouldn't make any mods to his TRX 450R. He made him ride it stock in the C class. And you could just see the frustration in his eyes when he'd go to the line, and every other bike had suspension and exhaust and this and that, and he's riding this stock bike, and he's struggling to keep up with the front runners because his machine just didn't perform. But the moment he transitioned, it was in a whole new world because he had this skill set he needed to be able to handle the modifications.
Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, I was fortunate enough in January. Go ahead. Let me. Yes.
Where are they from?
Ohio.
Okay.
I'm not watching the comments, so I don't know what he said.
Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I've been there. That's an amazingly awesome place. Jose, thank you for tuning in, man. Go ahead.
It's interesting. Since I've only been doing this for
it's Jake Vale.
Close to 3 years now.
How are you, bud?
Yeah, that's Jake.
Jake? Social media. Yeah.
Jake. Yeah, I know. Well, Jake. I met Jake in Prim for the Huevos race, and he actually rode my YFZ at Works on Sunday. So, yeah, but and that's my thing. Like, I've loaned my bikes out to other guys. As long as you're not brand new to the sport and you have some history,
Right.
We're all about having fun, dude. You want to come across the coast and you want to race and you have experience racing, I have no problem loaning a bike out. And I've met great people in my journey. It's only been about 3 years. I've talked to people around the world. I could probably travel to X number of countries right now and have a 250R waiting for me. You know, so that is much more valuable to me than being the fastest guy on the track, which at my age, I'm never going to be. But I enjoy helping people. You know, people message me on Instagram and Facebook from all over the world. I make parts for people down in South America and all these other stuff. You know, that's where I get the most enjoyment out of it. Yes, I have fun racing. Yes, I would love to win, and I've been on the podium, and that's awesome. But at the end of the day, that wasn't my sole purpose. I wanted to inspire others to not worry about their age and say, I'm too old to race. Well, here I am. I'm 46, and I'm going into my 3rd season. It can be done. And you get people like, you know, we have
Ellsworth.
Rick Ellsworth.
No, didn't they hit 100?
Late 60s, right?
That guy's older than dirt, man. No.
Rick and I are friends. He runs my parts and stuff, but he crushes it out there. I've never been in battle with him. He's probably still faster than me. You know, and I get shit on social media because people are like, "You're not fast. You're not this." I never said I was. I'm not out there to beat the next guy next to me. I'm out there to make friends and have fun and live my life, and that's what it's always been about.
I really do miss racing, but with my schedule and my life, and I do have an injury that keeps me from it. Maybe it's just an excuse because I don't want to go out there and not perform as well as I should or could, or as well as maybe people think I should because of who I'm supposed to be. Just because I can work on ATVs doesn't mean I can ride them as fast as everybody else.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. You know, and I'm in the same boat. I mean, I have had my share of accidents, and I've been fortunate. I haven't broken anything, and you know, I've had some bruises. And my worst accident was in Glamis, of course, leisure riding. But you know, I guess your mindset changes, and you kind of the edge is taken off, and you're not. It was also my first time in Glamis.
I think there's something to be said for that because if you look at yes, injuries happen while you're racing because you're competing, you're trying to dive into the turn, or you're going to go through the bumps, or whatever the case may be. But when you go to Glamis and you're looking back at your buddy and you're not paying attention and you hit a witch's eye, you know, I've ridden in those huge groups and you're screwing off and you're doing things you shouldn't be doing. And that's how you get hurt. And
you take your focus away for a split second out there, which is what I did. And I went over a Razorback, you know, partially separated my shoulder.
Nope.
It wasn't fun. You know, you gotta have your head on a swivel and be completely focused out there, especially in the dunes, and especially on a holiday weekend. And I was there President's Day.
You were just asking to get ran over.
Yeah, basically.
So being a software engineer, how does that get you into designing parts? If you could get into a little bit of that for me, you know, the technical side of building stuff.
So I, in 2017, when I turned 40, call it a midlife crisis, I don't know. I always wanted a Jeep Wrangler, and I bought a Jeep Wrangler. And after having it a few months, I found a flaw in the design of the Jeep Wrangler, and that happened to be the doors. Because the Jeep Wrangler doesn't have door pockets, like a hard molded door pocket, like a normal car. They just have nets. And I had put something in one of the door nets for like a day. And that net was all stretched out. It was terrible. So I was like, I think we could fix this. So I started prototyping. I spent months prototyping. I learned how to vacuum form. I learned how to, you know, make custom molds, even with hand tools, with belt sanders and stuff. And I launched that business in December 2017. I actually just hit my 5-year anniversary was December 4th this year. And there was no competition. There was nobody else out doing it. And it took off. So I ran that out of my garage all of 2018, working 7 days a week, literally working my software job from 9 to 5, having a quick dinner, going out to the garage, and working until 1 o'clock in the morning, making these pockets and selling them online. And then I think it was March of 2018, I brought in a buddy to help me, but the garage wasn't enough. So I found a shop in Torrance in SoCal, and we moved everything, and it's been going ever since. But that kind of had changed my mentality and perspective on being an engineer into more product design and figuring out how stuff works. So that's where it all started. And then come January 2021, after racing works for a bit and having some things under my belt, I had some friends who were going over the bars, especially in like Lake Havasu, because rocks were getting in their calipers on TRXs. You know, the YFC and some other bikes come with OEM inner rock guards for the caliper, but the TRX didn't have them. So that was my first goal. And I was like, well, I have this material. It's super, super durable. Looks great. Looks like carbon fiber. So those were my first parts, was the inner and the outer rock guards, because not everybody runs rock out PWT wheels. So you still have gaps where it can get in. And I gave them to my buddies. We started testing them for a few months, and nobody had any issues. So that's where it all started. And then I got the bug for creating parts, and just kind of started chipping away at it, all the different stuff. But I was trying to focus on new parts, stuff that really wasn't out there. I didn't want to come into the industry this late in the game and then just copy everybody else, because that's not the way I operate. So I started out with a lot of products that, you know, they just weren't out there. Or if they were out there, they weren't being advertised and nobody really knew about them. So, yeah, it just
That's
kind of evolved from there. I started teaching myself CAD, you know, stuff like that. I'm still not great at CAD, but I'm good enough to
What's
make
your
the parts that I make.
education background?
Well, like I said, I went to college for 1.5 years as a biology major, and then I dropped out and worked for an internet service provider doing internet tech support stuff for a couple of years, and then started teaching myself web design on the side, and got to the point where I became pretty good at it. And then I moved from Northeast Pennsylvania down to Philly. So I lived in Philly for a long time, and I was working for big companies, working on pharmaceutical websites and, you know, American Express. I actually worked at the National Basketball Association for a year. When 9/11, I was up there for 9/11. So I witnessed all that, and it was, you know, woke up in the morning at 8 o'clock to Howard Stern as my alarm. And next thing you know, I'm laying in bed and they're like, one of the towers just got hit by a plane. And I was like, what? So I got up and literally looked out my window. I was in North Jersey at the time, and I could see Tower 1 on fire. And then, you know, I jumped in the shower quick, went into the office, and we literally all sat there watching everything unfold. The second plane hitting and all that stuff. And it was pretty heavy, dude. Like, my parents couldn't get a hold of me they didn't know where I was at the time in New York. And they couldn't get a hold of me for hours because all the cell towers were down. You know, they were just being flooded. So that's kind of where the background started. And I'd always wanted to move to California. Happened to put my resume out to a company here in California that I still work for. And I interviewed, and a week later, I was like, I actually did the interview in Washington, D.C., because we have an office there. And on the way home, they called me and made the offer. So I called my wife and was like, shit just got real. What do you want to do? So we moved out here. I moved out here in January 2012 to start this job. No, I literally came out here with a suitcase and a backpack. Had nowhere to go. And I flew into LAX, went to got a cab to Venice Beach and stayed in a hotel for a few nights. Started my new job, and then I lived in hotels and Airbnbs for probably 7 months because we wanted to make sure that the job was a good fit. I had to find where, I had no idea what any of the areas were. So where do we move to? So I went through all that, and they came out in September, and we've been out here since as a family since September 2012. So I've done a lot of things living out here in California, and it's a bittersweet place to live, as you know, because there's so much to do within 2 hours of LA, but at the same time the traffic is terrible, the real estate's untouchable, so it is what
right.
it is.
And at some point in there, you had a medical issue too, didn't you?
I did. I was sitting at my desk, trying to keep this short, but I was sitting at my desk mid-August, right before mid-August, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, just working, and all of a sudden I passed out. And I wear glasses when I'm at the computer, so I came to, and my glasses were in my hand. And I was like, what just happened? And everyone was in meetings. There happened to be nobody in my area except one guy. He's like, I stood up, and he's like, you all right? I was like, I just passed out. He's like, did you pass out when you were standing up? And I said, no, I was just sitting here. And he's like, that's not good. So called my doctor. Excuse me. I set up an appointment for Tuesday morning, did an EKG, everything was fine. Went home. I think it was Wednesday morning. I passed out again, getting my daughter ready for school, and I had no idea what was going on. So the doctor wanted me to go see a cardiologist. Wednesday, I went to see the cardiologist, and I had passed out a third time, and did an EKG. Everything was fine, so he put a monitor on me for 24 hours. I went and saw him Friday afternoon around 2 o'clock. He put a rush on the results for the monitor, and they found out my heart was stopping for up to 13 seconds.
For no reason.
And it for no apparent reason. And I was in the best shape of my life, to be honest. I had been working out hard. I was pretty lean, all muscle. So when that happened, I had left the cardiologist's office that Friday, and I went home, and I got a call around 5 o'clock. And he's like, I need you in the hospital as soon as possible because your heart's stopping. I said, what? So I got, I called my parents. They were in vacation. They were in Cape Cod on vacation. So my wife took me up, and my mom's freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So they ran tests on me all night. And it actually started happening more often to where I had an echocardiogram, and as the guy is sitting over my head, I got to learn to when it was going to stop. Like I could feel it. And I said, watch this. Next thing you know, I'm flatlining. Still talking to him. And he's like, whoa. He's like, dude, I've been doing this job a long time, and I've never seen anybody do this where you're talking to me and you're flatlining. So they ran tests all night. They did, everything they possibly could. Couldn't figure it out. And then, I'm laying in the hospital room Saturday afternoon around noon, and he comes in and he's like, we don't know what it is, but we have to put a pacemaker in to keep you alive. So I was like, okay. And it was my mom's birthday, August 15th, 2015. It was my mom's birthday, and it was crazy. It was like, it ended up, they still can't tell me why. They never could, but it was an electrical issue. The signal that goes from your atrium to your ventricle, it wasn't always getting there. So my heart runs 95% of the time on its own right now, but sometimes late at night, early morning, I could be sitting on the couch having coffee in the morning, and I could feel the pacemaker kick in. And my heart rate, it's set at 45. So the pacemaker doesn't kick in until my heart rate drops down to 45.
What restrictions do you have?
None. The only restriction I have is I was a competitive free diver and spear fisherman, which I got into in 2013. And once I got the pacemaker that they put in me, I'm limited to 65 feet deep. So that has been the only limitation, is I just can't free dive down below 65 feet. But I can still go out and dive, and I have. I can run on a treadmill for as long as I want. My heart has no issues. I can run a 50-minute works race at Prim or Havasu, the hardest conditions, and I've never had
That's pretty
issues.
awesome. I'm glad that you don't have any issues, you know, and you're still in really good shape, you know.
Yeah, me too. I mean, having something like that happen really changes your perspective on life, and that's what really, after a few years, I was like, there's some stuff I want to do, and I don't want to wait and then have those regrets later. So getting back into quads was one of my favorite. I loved riding quads back in the day. Unfortunately, with work and life and living in cities and not having a place to store a quad, I couldn't do that for a long time. But then when I got the shop here, I had the space to buy quads. I got my daughter into racing, and honestly, dude, it was one of the best things I ever did. Most rewarding thing. So the people I've met, the friends that I have now, have now become my best friends.
I've never asked you this in all of our conversations. How does your wife feel about all this?
Surprisingly, after my history, she's always been very supportive. I've never gotten a no from her. She knows I'm an analytical person. I'm very controlled, and I ride within my means. Could I be a faster rider? Absolutely. But because I have a family, I have all these issues, you know, the heart issue, and all, you know, I was never out there to kill myself. You know, I've only had a few crashes, a couple of them not so great, but it's always been a controlled, I'm going to take this at my pace, I'm going to learn as I go, and as I feel comfortable going faster, then
I like to call it, you stayed in your world. You know, because
yes. and you know, again, being a software engineer, even if I break my wrist, imagine what that does to my work.
Slows you way down, right?
And making money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big time.
I always like to make sure to tell everybody, hey, even the pros, stay in your world. If you're riding and you're worried about what that other individual is doing, or if you're trying to keep up with somebody that's a higher level than you, or maybe you just don't have it that day, now you're thinking about them instead of thinking about you and what you're doing and the way you're supposed to do it. So get back in your world and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's what I've done. You know, I have a blast running 30B class with all my friends. Like, we were stacked. All my buddies were in that class. I think there was 9 of us this past year. And we would have more fun on that Sunday 30B class, just racing against each other. And then we all go back to camp and we can chat about it. We can laugh. You know, it's been like, those are some of my best memories. It has nothing to do with getting on the podium every time. Would I like to? Sure. But for me, it's about the adventure. It's about the friends I've made. It's about the things I've learned about quads and myself. And, you know, that's why
you know what? You brought it up multiple times, and I didn't comment on it. Growing the ATV industry is what it's really all about. And having a network of friends and people that you deal with is everything. That's what grows our sport, because everybody goes away with a positive attitude, a positive experience, and you can reach out to people that really don't know what ATVs are and show them what an amazing experience it is. Whether you're recreational riding or racing, we're all the same family.
Yes.
A lot of recreational people watch the races or know somebody that races, so there's a lot of crossover.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it doesn't matter what you start out on if you want to try racing. It doesn't matter if it's a 400 EX or 250 EX. You have to get your feet wet.
I don't,
you just got to do it.
Anybody that's ever raced that didn't get hooked. I mean, it just,
yeah.
Once you do it, oh boy, you're.
Their wallet might not have been hooked, but.
Well, that ruins it for a lot of us. It's a very expensive sport, and I don't see any way that you're ever going to make it less costly for your upper levels. But like we talked earlier, I guarantee we could lessen the cost for your entry level classes for sure.
I agree. I mean, people ask me, it's like, well, we've talked about this, and I know your opinion on race gas, and I agree, but you could start out on a 400 EX on pump gas and not be spending crazy money on gas, because you've got travel, you've got race fees, you got gas, you got all this, possibly hotels, depending on the race where it is, but you can eliminate a lot of that stuff, especially if you live close to a track and you just want to try it out, just go out for the day. You run pump gas, you run a stock bike, you're into it for $100, $200 max with race fees. I mean, I run multiple classes, so my race fees are always higher. But yeah, it doesn't have to be. Once you build a motor, once you put all the exhaust and the intakes and all this other stuff on, now you're spending. I mean, geez, what's it? $100 for a 5-gallon pail of VP right now?
Yeah, it's up there. 110? It's up there.
And if you're running a works race, well, you're going to go through at least half of that.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, $50 right there. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about the C level, not the pro.
I get it. I mean, I really am an anti-pump gas guy, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. But I do understand the pump gas theory and understand why you would do that. Your stock machine, all you have is Nerf bars and a kill switch, and you can run those everywhere. When you go to the sand dunes or you go on the trails, the kill switch might not be a bad thing. And in a lot of places, Nerf bars necessarily aren't a bad thing. So.
Yeah. Honestly, dude, I mean, I think a kill switch should be factory. Should have been factory on all bikes.
I can see the pluses and minuses to it.
But like even me, I'm just out leisurely riding in Glamis, and I crash. I had a kill switch. If I didn't, that bike, because the bike, I went over the bars, but the bike rolled out. That bike would just kept going down.
Very well could have. Very well could have. Somebody would have stopped it or something,
No, there was nobody else around. It just would have, whatever it ended up. But again, it's like safety gear. People run what they want. At my age and with my family and everything else, I've always been a big promoter of safety gear. Some guys don't wear chest protectors. Well, I've gotten pelted pretty gnarly in Havasu, where I had bruises where the chest protector didn't cover because I just got pelted everywhere. And then, I had a crash at Glen Helen on the TT track where I landed on my head. And if I wasn't wearing my neck brace, I literally went black for not long, but enough to where if that neck brace wasn't there, I don't know if we'd be talking.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, I had a bad get off in 99, head injury, and it's happened so fast that you don't know. So wear all the protection that you feel comfortable with. I wore chest protectors. I didn't wear chest protectors. I wore a lot of enduro style jackets that had padding and things in them and stuff like that. So, you're having the same effect. but I didn't feel comfortable with the chest protector. It didn't sit right, you know. The enduro style jackets always seemed better, and they had, you know, you could get them with elbow pads and back pads and all kinds of different stuff, you know. So.
Oh yeah, and I mean, the thing is, because I was in a leisure mode mentality, I didn't wear my chest protector or neck brace when I went to Glamis, and it ended up being my worst crash. And I was lucky, you know, could have gone very wrong. I mean, because I have the pacemaker and the box is right here, and there's wires that are just under the skin. If I ever sever those wires, I have a friend who's a anesthesiologist. He's like, you need to be careful with that because they're literally right under the skin. You can see them. But if I ever sever them, that's not a fun procedure because the leads go down into my heart chambers. So it's not like they could just be pulled back out. So not having a chest protector on, when I went over the bars, my master cylinder actually hit me just higher. It bruised my collarbone because I went down so hard. And, you know, in hindsight, now I won't even ride leisurely without my chest protector because of that.
I agree with that so much. You were good friends with, or you had a relationship with Rob Selvey. What was that?
Yes.
What was that like?
Yes. So, I'm trying to think. It was around a little over 2 years ago. I had bought a motor that was a 363 Selvey. So when I got it, I had some questions. So I reached out to Rob, and we had a great conversation on the phone. He's like, "Yeah, come out. Let's take a look at it, some stuff." So I went out there, and he was just one of those guys that you bond with immediately. Like just such a genuine, sincere, like, how do I put this? He wanted to listen. He listened to you. It wasn't like a lot of people that are just like, whatever, blah, 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 I'm busy. We sat there and spent 2 hours just chatting, and we became very good friends. Sending text. I'd come up with a new part design and send it to him like, "Hey, Rob, what do you think of this?" He's like, "Dude, I love it." Or, "Looks great, but adjust this a little bit." Okay. And, I'd go out there and see him a bunch of times, and he came out to Glen Helen to see me race the GBC series one time, helped tune my bike. Just one of those awesome guys. And unfortunately, he got COVID in January this year, and the respiratory issues got him, and he passed away. So that was a major loss for me because I had actually come back from a race. It was Prim last January. I came back from the race. I'm sitting on the couch on Sunday night, and a buddy of mine hit me up, and he's like, "Did Selvey pass away?" I was like, "What?" I had just gotten home. I had been on social media. Sure enough, I looked it up, and he had. And I sat there for an hour on the couch myself, like just thinking. And I broke down, dude. I lost it. Like, that's how much of an impact he had on me and how much he helped me as you've been a great mentor as well. But it was like, I spent so much time with him, and he was just one of those guys that you had an immediate connection with, and I just couldn't believe he was gone. So,
yeah, I only got to meet him one
rough.
time. And I sat and talked with him and Mike Mead for probably 30 minutes before I knew who he was. Because I had never met him back in the day. He was in the industry before me. And then when he came back, obviously we were in two different areas of town. So there was no crossover. But I was working on some skid plates with Mike Mead, and he came by and was talking with Mike about trading, about stock trading. And this was bizarre, and I sat in there listen to these two guys talk about stock trading for an hour or more. And I know nothing about it. I don't do it. So I was just like mesmerized a little bit. And then Mike goes, "Hey, have you ever met Rob?" "No, I never." And then he tells me who he is, and I'm like, "Oh, wow, hey, wow." Heard a lot about you, and everything. So it was.
Yeah. No, it was that was a big hit for me. I'm blessed to, once he passed away, as you can imagine, he had a shop full of parts that we had to get returned to owners. And I offered to help the family and basically put it out there on all the Facebook groups, like, "Hey, I'm putting together a list. Give me your name, number, address, all that stuff. What parts did Rob have?" And I think we got back 99% of everything that Rob had, and that brought me to Cindy, his sister, who she's on there now, Mrs. Rosinka. We're like great friends now, and I'm so glad to have her and her husband Bill in my life. Like, we can go chat, hug it out. Like, it keeps Rob close to me, and she's just heart of gold. So
That's so
I'm
awesome.
very grateful for that.
That's what ATVs do for people. They bring us all together and make a family that we didn't have. There's so many friends I have around the world that I may only see them every 10 years, sometimes 20 years. But once you see them, you never missed a beat.
Yeah, no, I know how that goes. My best friends back on the East Coast, we haven't seen each other for years, but you go right back
exactly.
into it, like a day hasn't passed.
I mean, I love the ATV family that we have. That's what I miss about not traveling as much. But it is, everybody's life evolves and has to go the direction it goes, and that changes you a lot. It's almost hard to talk about to a point, because traveling 10 to 15 times a year or more doesn't sound like a lot, but you're gone in 3 to 5 days. It adds up. And
oh yeah, it does add up. I mean, well, yeah,
I miss it, but
even me now with all these races, and some of our works races are in like Idaho. I don't really want to do 28 hours of driving round trip.
Right.
It's too much. And I don't have time, to be honest. It's like because I work full time and I have this, Slick Rock gear as a side business and all this other stuff. I can't take all these days off. I have to pick and choose. And with gas prices the way they were last year, I cut out a bunch of races because
I totally
it was too hard.
Yeah, I totally get that. I mean, that's one of the things that I hear a lot through the people that I get to talk to is the price of gas is really putting a damper on things. One of the real fast lady pros back east that I talked to, her whole program changed because of the price of gas. Her whole outlook for 23 may have changed. So it's kind of a bummer. I hope that everybody gets it worked out. Josh Merritt checked in here a few minutes ago. Have you ever met Josh? Hey, he's a good dude.
No.
I think he's got some mad skills. I
know who
wish
he is.
Would unleash the beast and let it go back there in the woods, because I think that he could really do some damage up front with those guys. I mean, granted, Walker and Bryson are no slouches, but you can take nothing away from them. Obvious Walker came out and ruined the works guys.
I did get a chance to meet Walker at the Huevos concert, and it's funny because growing up in PA, doing what I did, taking so many years off, obviously I never thought in a million years I would be here talking to the great Leonard Duncan.
Who's that? Where's that guy?
But
Who
just the
was
other
that guy?
people I've met too, you know.
Come on, dude.
And you know, you have been so helpful over the past couple of years. I think we've known each other a little over 2 years now, somewhere around there. And Lauren, you know, I can't thank you enough, because I came into this totally green, knew nothing. And like I said, whether it's my race friends or some of my mentors like yourself, like I've been a sponge and I've taken it all in, and I love that. I love learning. I love pushing the envelope. I love creating. So that's what I'm going to keep pushing to do. But yeah, you know, getting to meet Jeremiah Jones and Matt Coulter, the Kangaroo Kid. You know, we hung out in Vegas. Like, what? You know, because I grew up watching the Huevos videos. You know, Shane Hitt. I met Shane, and who else did I meet when I was out there? I don't even know. A bunch of other people. But it's surreal, man. It's surreal.
I've gotten to
Still is.
know and form friendships with a lot of those people, and it's pretty amazing. I'm still a fan. And when you say mentor to me, I'm scratching my head, because I'm still thinking I'm that 22, 23, 24-year-old kid looking up to all those guys back east, you know, as I'm learning my trade. So, you know, if I don't know how to take that, please forgive me, because I'm just one of the guys. I'm just one of the guys. Dude.
It's fine, but yeah,
I love talking about ATVs. So if somebody has a question or somebody wants to talk, dude, you know me, I'm all game. Let's do it. Let's have the conversation.
I know, you know, there's not many people that I can text in the middle of the day that will get back to me, especially as it comes down to motors and stuff as a motor builder, because most people are just so slammed. They, you know, you and Rob were the only two people that, at least on the motor side, that I could text. I knew I had a phone call away or a text away, and I really appreciate that.
I try,
so thank
brother.
you.
I mean, I've been sloughing. There's a couple of people that are mad at me because I haven't been answering them because I'm so overwhelmed right now. It's unbelievable. I mean, we get so focused when I'm working on the computer or when I'm shipping. That's generally when I can answer. But if I'm working on a machine, I don't have my phone with me. You know, face into that, and that's, you know, your hands are busy. You've worked on enough machines that
I get it.
You don't have time to do that stuff. So I love.
So I appreciate you taking the time.
I enjoy the conversations that we have. You know, I really do. It brings a new level for me. So the biggest thing that I can tell you that I've tried to learn, and this is you got to get kicked in the testicles to be humble. And, you know, you get all big and you think you're all badass, and then there's somebody that you don't know knows anything, and they teach you something, and you get kicked enough times, you're like, okay, I need to shut my mouth and listen a little more, because everybody can teach you something. And what I mean by that is your perspective on things. I may not always agree with you, but I'm thinking, how do you think that? Well, you go, how do you think that way? But I analyze it, you know, and sometimes when we get done texting, I'm over there thinking about what you were saying, going, I really have to figure out how he got there, because it doesn't make sense to me, you know. And maybe if we were having a conversation, I could go, hey, dude, how did you get to that answer? Because that's 2 + 2 doesn't equal that, you know. And you have an answer for me. There's an equation and a calculation for it, you know. And once you get the calculation, you go, I see that, but it still doesn't make sense to me, you know, because I have a different perspective of the industry than you do.
I'm pretty good at bending light.
You also got involved with something, we'll touch on it really quick, some aftermarket billet stuff that was being made. I don't know a whole lot about it. Briefly touch on that for me.
So when Rob, as Rob and I got closer, he shared with me that he was helping a couple other guys work on what we would call the ultimate billet 250R cases. And those two guys are Bud Miamone and Brent Miamone. And Brent was a racer, a bike racer and stuff, quads, all that stuff. But Bud Miamone is actually the creator of the Cobra ATV. So they had been working on these billet cases for a while. And Mike Mead, it's funny you brought up Mike earlier. So Mike Mead leased his space off Bud and is now in Ohio with Bud. But Bud brought in Selby because he, was such a strong in the 250R world. And Selby helped work on, the cases, give his input. And before Selby passed away, a set was sent to Selby, and we sat there and we went through it to make final adjustments. And he's like, here's why we're going to do this. These are all the features it has. So when Selby passed away, that was our main goal, was to see that to completion. So I'm now very, very close and very good friends with Bud and Brent. And I have a set of cases here that I haven't gotten to build yet, but they are pretty next level. I mean, basically their main feature is there's no more boring cases to go from a small bore to a big bore. So you can go from a 250R OEM cylinder to a 390 just by changing a deck insert. And that was the main feature of it, that it's all bolt-on, so you can put a CR500 cylinder on it. Obviously, you're going to have to adjust the crank, depending on what you do. But that was their big feature. It was literally you could put any jug up to a 600, I think, or maybe bigger, I don't even know, without boring the cases. Obviously, they were strengthened in certain areas. There is no center gasket used. All you use is some Yamabond or whatever the Honda equivalent is, just a sealant, because they are machined so precisely. The other thing was they did a needle bearing for the shift shaft, which was not stock on a 250R. And they also have a replaceable clutch actuator. So if the chain were to ever come off and damage or destroy the clutch sleeve, the actuator arm, that is now replaceable. They also put porting around inside of that unit to help oil come around, to keep the clutch lever at the shaft lubricated. And then they also recessed the case saver mounts, because we all know on a 250R that was one of the biggest things. If that chain went off and you weren't running a good case saver, those mounts were taken off. So now the chain can completely bypass that. And worst case, if it hits that clutch actuator housing, that is easy to replace. So, those are some of the biggest features. And I think I finally have all my parts, so I can get this assembled and put into my new build. But it literally is like, when we all saw this, and like, what? I mean, the amount of, I think it was a 3-year project, and you can imagine the hours of CAD design and testing and machining and all that stuff. But Bud and Brent do work for the Department of Defense, and they've created crazy engines and stuff. So you can imagine if you're doing work for the DoD, the precision has to be 0.001 millimeter. We're not talking about thousandths of an inch here. We're talking about micrometers. So it's been cool, and we're still. I'm going to do some videos on that. I'm going to get a video on YouTube, and hopefully, I'm talking to Dirt Wheels about doing a feature just on those cases, and I may have another special project up my sleeve down the road. But yeah, it's been fun, being not directly involved, but indirectly through other people, and I've gained the trust of many people, and it's again, something I never would have imagined.
Well, that's awesome.
20 years ago.
You make sure you keep us posted on how that's going for you and what you got going on. You know, I always love to see what you're doing and get a little earful of what's going on and make sure that you're on the right track. And
hey, everybody, it's Leonard Duncan here. Another bench prep conversation.